You're listening to the Low Carb Conversations podcast with your hosts, Holly Jean and Leah.
I'm Leah Williamson. I'm a functional nutritional therapy practitioner at Nourishing Conversations. I specialize in applying nutritional therapy to low carb paleo keto lifestyles.
I'm Holly Jean Barrett, functional nutritional therapy practitioner at Rabbit Holistic. I lead curious clients down the rabbit hole of natural holistic wellness. Starting with nutrition, I empower my clients to take control of their health and create a wellness lifestyle they love.
Low Carb Conversations is the podcast to help you take a critical look at the current health news headlines. Now let's get started.
So many of you have been telling us how much you're loving Outer Aisle products and how you're finally able to enjoy your favorite foods again. If you haven't tried them yet, Outer Aisle's cauliflower sandwich thins and pizza crusts are the perfect low-carb, keto-friendly bread swap for making your pizza, tacos, burgers, sandwiches, you name it. They're made with simple grain and gluten-free ingredients like fresh cauliflower, whole cage-free eggs, Parmesan cheese, all while being packed with protein and a full serving of veggies. I wasn't surprised to see they have over 6,000 raving reviews from other low-carb eaters. You definitely want to check them out at outeraislegourmet.com and use code LOWCARB10 for 10% off your first order.
Hello and welcome to the Low Carb Conversations podcast. I am your host, Holly Jean, and today our guest is Temple Stewart of the Ketogenic Nutritionist. Temple is a registered dietitian and she helps women lose weight with a ketogenic approach. Welcome to the show, Temple.
Thank you. I'm so honored and happy to be here. This is exciting.
And we have Leah. Hi, Leah. How are you?
Hi, everyone.
Okay, so I've been looking forward to this conversation because you are a registered dietitian, but dietitian and keto don't usually go together. A lot of times they're at opposites. So it doesn't really fit the paradigm of the American Dietetics Association. And so I'm interested in learning about your journey and how keto became a part of your dietary practice that you support and then also do with your coaching.
Yeah, you're right. It is not something you hear kind of go together in the same sentence. Keto and dietitian is often either frowned upon or you hear about a dietitian talking bad about keto in whatever way. It's been a journey, and it really started, my career started as a clinical dietitian in the Veterans Affairs Hospital in Bay Pines, which is here in the US just for veterans. And so that's where I was a clinical dietitian. And, as a clinical dietitian, you're seeing everything all over the spectrum in terms of heart patients, kidney failure, diabetes, all of the above. And I was always seeing veterans too late, after they had already had severe damage and all of this. And I was preaching and teaching and coaching the typical thing that we're taught in school, eat your whole grains, make sure you're getting enough fiber, all of that. And I just wasn't seeing results. And so that kind of led me down my own wellness journey for myself, as I myself was struggling with insulin resistance with a diagnosis of PCOS. And it was a long journey in figuring out that diagnosis, but I started really investigating both for my veterans and for myself, because I knew that there was something more. And I was really frustrated with the advice I was given. Oh, you just need to eat less. You need to move more to lose this weight, to get this PCOS under control. And it just wasn't happening. And so at the time I was a student dietitian. I wasn't a dietitian yet. And I started really, really trying to focus in and research. And I came across The Obesity Code was really the first book I read by Dr. Jason Fung. It's an incredible book. And that really started kind of my low carb-ish ketogenic journey. I didn't really go full in until Virta Health came to the hospital that I was working at and did a ketogenic research trial with my veterans. And I saw my veterans reversing type 2 diabetes, losing 60, 70, 80 pounds, reversing metabolic syndrome, just incredible results that I was seeing. And so that's when I went full in keto for myself and ended up reversing my PCOS and getting pregnant naturally. So that's kind of the condensed version of how I got to be where I am. I kind of swam upstream with my colleagues and other dietitians that I was working with. And, I'm willing to do that if it helps someone. So yeah, that's like the short and condensed version of my story.
So great. I love that story. It's like you're the rebel now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you had the PCOS diagnosis and you were insulin resistant, did you realize at the time that those may be connected, or when did that come about for you?
I had no idea, and I think this is wild. I was never even taught about insulin resistance aside from type 2 diabetes in college. And as you know, it is really the primary driver of most chronic disease and metabolic issues. And so, no, to answer your question, I had no idea what was going on with me. I just knew my hormones were wacko, and I was having all these symptoms that just weren't getting better. And all the answer I was getting from my endocrinologist and my PCP was, oh, we just need to put you on birth control and metformin. And so what sparked my interest and what kind of got me curious about insulin is when I started to understand or understand why metformin worked for PCOS and why it kind of helped. So that kind of got me going into the insulin resistance realm, but I really had no idea. And again, I look back now and see that I wasn't taught anything about insulin resistance in school, and I don't know how that's possible becoming a dietitian.
Yeah, that disconnect is it still amazes me. I was having a conversation with a nurse friend and I said something about metabolic syndrome and she's like, oh, you mean diabetes? I was like, no, there's so much more to it than just diabetes. Well, congratulations. You're a new mommy now.
Yes. Yeah. I have an adopted 3-year-old and a 5-month-old. So it's chaos.
Oh,
but I love
fun.
it.
Yeah.
Chaos, right?
That's wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of fun. It goes by so fast. I'm sure people tell you that all the time.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. So now you have your own coaching program. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that and what that looks like and what your clients look like?
Yeah. So after I saw such good results with my veterans in the clinical setting, I decided, hey, I'm going to make this full time, and I'm going to do just specialize in keto, and I'm only going to coach keto. And so I quit my job. I started my own telehealth private practice, and I started running group programs for women struggling to lose weight. And of course, that is group programs. I get everything in between, from PCOS to hypothyroidism to Hashimoto's to excess cortisol, you name it. I see it in my group programs. But ultimately, as we know, keto is such a good way to bring hormones align and back to where they're supposed to be. And so, yeah, I've been doing this. I've coached hundreds of women across the globe. I'm honored, and I'm so blessed to be able to do what I love and coach women in this setting.
Yeah, that's so great. And it's nice that you're helping to spread that awareness, where a lot of people really don't realize that all those conditions you mentioned, keto works for them because they all have roots in blood sugar imbalancing and hormonal imbalancing, and keto just kind of works to straighten that all out.
Yeah, exactly. It is. It's fascinating. Dr. Benjamin Bickman, who I highly respect, and I just think the world of in terms of as a person, but also as an instructor. But he always describes it as, instead of like cutting off the branches of a tree with the symptoms, he cuts down the whole trunk, or something of that nature. But when you take care of insulin resistance, you just take care of this huge, enormous swath of issues that can go wrong in the body. So it's really truly getting down to the root cause versus, just treating symptoms. So I really liked his analogy. He says it way better than I do, but you guys get the picture.
Yeah. Well, Leah, do you have any questions for Temple?
No, I'm ready to jump straight into the first article. I think let's get into some good discussion. Yeah. So the first article, it's discussing why is the developed world still continuing in the grip of obesity and diabetes epidemic, and why people can't keep the kilos off. And it's suggesting that dieting is not really just about calories, low fat, keto, or paleo. There's more to it. They interviewed a professor, David Raubenheimer. I hope I probably didn't say that right, but he's the co-author of a new book called Eat Like the Animals. And he says that we've been the approach to dieting, we've been treating it like an engineering problem. And we tell people to eat less fat and the problem will be solved. But then, as we know, we've been telling people, well, we haven't, but this is the world was telling people to eat less fat, and that hasn't solved anything. And then the whole focus has become on to, this is a sugar problem. Is it as simple as that? And he's saying it's not really a linear system. It's that we're dealing with here. Animal nutrition, human nutrition is an ecology, and you have to factor in all of the players. And he says part of the understanding could be a fundamental misunderstanding that what is our main driver for eating. And he says humans, like many other species, actually have a stronger appetite for protein than for the main energy-providing nutrients, which are fats and carbohydrates. So that means that if the protein in our diet is diluted with fats and carbs, we will eat more energy to get the protein that our bodies are craving. And the protein mechanism in appetite is a revolutionary insight. He says obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, they're all driven by diet. And we have to use what we're learning to bring them in under control. So this is like a different take, I guess. Temple, you've been discussing that, dealing with insulin resistance, but he's kind of saying focusing on the protein. So what were your thoughts about this article?
Yeah, I really liked it, to be honest. And I agree with a lot of it in terms of protein. Carbs really are the macronutrient we can do without. We have different pathways that we can survive without that. Protein, not so much, right? They're essentially the building block to almost every function, not every function, but nearly in the cell as well as the body. And so I think that what we've done with making weight just such a calories in versus calories out thing has just watered down weight loss in general. So I really like the emphasis on protein. I think the average person doesn't get enough protein. And so I agreed with a lot of what he said in the article. And I think that one other issue that we do is we treat the human body like it's some robot, right? With this calories in, calories out methodology that is just nonsense, because we have hormones, we have very complex processes in the body that just don't operate on that thermic effect of calories in versus calories out. So we have hormones and we have emotions. We have people, living in different parts of the world where they don't have access to good food. We have a host of issues that we have to look at. But that was just kind of my take on it. And I do think that protein is absolutely an essential nutrient to the body.
Yeah, definitely. I think in part of the article, it was saying that it's estimated to have over 1 million expressions of protein that build the human body and allow it to function. So it's really doing a lot in the body. And I guess he's trying to say that, we're driven to protein. That's how, I guess, our animal, Paleolithic kind of instinct is coming from, that we're driven to, hunt and source protein. But these days we're doing it in the supermarket. We're still foraging for it, but we're going to the butcher and we're hunting the protein that way. So with your, often when I'm talking to clients, when they're trying to get started on everything, I usually try and focus on maybe what kind of proteins that are good for them and how to get that into their diet. What kind of suggestions do you give to your clients around protein?
So I probably give similar suggestions. I focus on grass-fed beef, wild-caught salmon, fish, all of that, free-range chicken, if it's, and of course within budget. I think animal protein, I do think is superior to plant protein in many ways. So I think you're right, or he's right in terms of the dilution of carbohydrates and just the sheer lack of nutrition in the foods that we eat nowadays. Even if you take it away from fat and protein and you just look at the man-made garbage food that we're eating, it's just trash. And so, I tell my clients to number one, focus on protein. So that's a priority with me when I counsel clients, is make sure you're getting your protein. It's so satiating. It helps you feel so full. It does a great job in mitigating the glycemic response of food. So it helps you keep blood sugars very, very stable. But focusing on getting enough protein throughout the day, making sure that you're choosing good quality sources, and making sure it is helpful to to have plant protein. I'm okay with plant proteins as well. I just don't like them to see them as the number one source.
Definitely. That makes a lot of sense. And it's kind of like that, or like people have probably heard this saying before, but basically, a steak versus a donut. So the donut's basically, inflammatory fats and sugar and carbohydrates, and then versus a steak, the steak is going to leave you feeling more full and satiated versus a donut. And people, that's just logical. I think people do understand that, but then are still driven to the donut. So, so almost trying to get to here is like, yeah, it's great to say eating more protein could be the source of all of your dietary worries, but then, like, is it really?
Yeah. And, I think what we forget about, or we don't forget about it, but those inflammatory oils and the sugars and dietary fat coupled with sweetness, sweet fat is extremely addicting. I mean, it acts on serotonin and dopamine and all the things in your brain that make you want more and more and more and more. And so that's another aspect of all of this is it's hard. It's hard to say no to those foods when, number one, you're surrounded by them, and number two, they're readily available, and number three, they're just incredibly addicting.
Exactly. Yeah. And in the article too, it's kind of suggests that, actually, I'll read this statement out. It says, governments should use tools like taxation, subsidies, labeling laws, and health education. Industry should prioritize their production of affordable, healthy foods, and consumers should use their purchasing decisions to push government and industry into making healthy eating easier. I mean, like, that statement's so powerful, but what are some thoughts on how we need to get to that place?
Yeah, I think it's harder than just using taxation and subsidies. I think that's hard. I do agree a lot with a lot of this stuff. I think we have to be careful encroaching on freedom, but I do think that labeling laws, I think that one of the biggest issues is manipulative labeling from food companies, making things look healthy when they're truly not, at making things advertised to children, and that should never be. And so I think there's a lot around this. I've heard the whole soda tax thing and all that, and I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea. I mean, we tax tobacco, right? So I think that all this could work. And I do think, I think the number one thing as a consumer that you can do is use the dollar as your vote, right? And start purchasing what you can afford now, and start purchasing locally, and start purchasing from farmers, and really do the job of creating an environment where you're not just throwing your dollar to these huge food companies and corporations that really don't have your health or best interest at heart.
Yeah, definitely. And you probably know, or maybe like as your children get older, the pestering power of marketing is just like, it's everywhere in all the food. Yeah. And so, yeah, you can't, it's not even safe to go shopping with a child.
No, it's not. And you look at the psychology behind some of the marketing, and it's really almost scary, because kids aren't able to fully comprehend and make full thoughts about, okay, why this is good, whatever, but they attract them with colors, they attract them with cartoons. They put them at shelf level eye height for children. It's very, very, it's intense. And you look at it and it's like, man, your kids are almost targeted in a way, which is not cool with me.
Yeah, so true. Holly, did you have some thoughts around that last statement? I know you probably do.
Always. Yeah, no, I think people really need to understand the power of voting essentially with their dollar, with their fork, because you're right. Industry does respond to industry. They respond to how we spend our money. And if we're spending more money at the farmer's market, if we're whatever takes money out of industry's pocket, they will respond to compete in that way. And so it is very important. And the Food Babe is really good at this too, like writing letters, doing those campaigns. It does make a difference if we want to have ingredients removed. But I think really the most impactful thing, if you don't want to get on the phone or write a letter, is be choosy with how you spend your money, because industry will respond to those fluctuations. And if they don't care about the health, but if that's where you're spending your money, then they will follow the trend for sure.
Yeah, totally. And just echoing on that, you can see that in real time with all the new keto, quote unquote, keto products that have come out that are just absolutely absurd in a lot of ways. But yeah, you're totally right, Holly. They respond quick as well.
They sure do. Yeah. Now, if we can just get them to do the labeling.
Right.
Imagine if they were labeled like the, I was going to say, imagine if they were labeled like the cigarette packets are, if we did that with the food industry, that would be pretty amazing.
It would.
Food contains substances known to cause cancer.
Or just pictures of what happens to you if you eat these, sugary foods too. Yeah.
There was another thing in the article that I thought was interesting, and how it talks about, you touched on this a little bit, Leah, how when an animal's in nature is affected by the food is infected by its environment, where an animal forages, the season, the weather, the action of other animals, the animal takes that all in. And as humans, we're not that different. And yes, our foraging looks a little bit different by, like you said, we're now going to the supermarket or the butcher or the restaurant or something. But I think Mark Hyman describes it really well, as like that food is still information. It doesn't matter how we're gathering it, but the food we're eating, just like for an animal, is still giving us information of where we are in the world, what the season is. And so I think it's important to also pay attention to that too when we're eating. And it's not just, even though we can get any foods at any time now because they're flown in from all around the world. And so just kind of taking that into consideration and how our body is responding to that, and whether or not it's confusing, I'm not really sure. I haven't looked into it, but it's just interesting to think about too. And I think that's why, again, it's like so important to shop locally and seasonally.
Raise your hand if you want to eat chocolate every day, completely guilt-free. I know this is audio, but I see you, and I'm raising my hand too. Cacao Bliss from Earth Echo Foods has made it so you can stop saying no to all your favorite desserts and start enjoying chocolate again. Cacao Bliss is a daily superfood blend that crushes cravings, promotes proper gut health, relieves stress, supports brain health and mental focus, and it even supports your weight loss goals. Leah and I are regularly enjoying this perfect blend of the world's most powerful superfoods. Has raw Peruvian cacao, turmeric, MCT oil, coconut, Himalayan sea salt, cinnamon, black pepper, and today Cacao Bliss creator Danette May is giving our listeners 15% off. All you have to do to claim yours is visit earthechofoods.com/low carb conversations and enter code low carb. You'll even get your sample along with a digital recipe guide so that you can start enjoying Cacao Bliss right away. Enjoy, take a picture, tag us in it. We want to see how you're enjoying your Cacao Bliss. Mountain Rose Herbs is an online purveyor of the highest quality organically grown herbs and spices. They have teas, essential oils, and also botanical goods. Their passion for organics is woven into every fiber and thread of the Mountain Rose Herbs operations. They offer one of the most thorough selections of certified organic herbs, spices, and botanical products today. What I respect most about them is that they are committed to the quality of their products over price or profit. In their mission to provide plant lovers with exceptional organic botanicals harvested with the utmost respect for the places they grow and the people who grow them. Learn more at mountainroseherbs.com and use code LOWCARB10 to save 10% off your order.
All right. Well, we're going to move on to some new keto myths. There's always so many out there. Like whenever we talk keto on the show, the amount of articles that come up that say it's not good for you, it's bad for you, you're eliminating whole food groups, it's this, it's that. Now, Holly has one on cholesterol.
Yeah, and this one is in Yahoo News, so that's like a big site
reliable
where people.
Source.
Well, I wouldn't say reliable, but it gets a lot of eyes on it. Like people see this all the time. A lot of people have Yahoo Mail, and so that's why we like discussing things like this, because people get a lot of eyes on it. So to flip the script a little bit is nice. So this one is called, the title of it is "The Keto Diet is a Disease-Promoting Disaster. The Eating Plan Raises Cholesterol, Hastens Kidney Failure, and is Unsafe in Pregnancy." So just a little summary for our listeners. This article says, with little research into its safety, dietitians from the nonprofit Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine in Washington, D.C. analyzed the available evidence in what they have called the most comprehensive analysis yet. They published the results, and it suggests that the keto diet could trigger a range of health complaints, including raised cholesterol, kidney failure, and pregnancy complications. And it says the risks of going keto are thought to outweigh any weight loss benefits, with one medic even calling the eating plan a disease-promoting disaster. Loading up on red meat, processed meat, and saturated fat, and restricting carbohydrate-rich vegetables, fruits, legumes, and whole grains is a recipe for bad health. Where to start on this one? You know what? Why don't we, I think my first question to you is, Temple, let's target the unsafe during pregnancy. Well, since you were just recently pregnant, did you follow keto still during your pregnancy? And did you look into whether or not it might be safe or unsafe?
Yeah, so this is a great question, and I'm definitely not giving like medical advice to anyone, but I did follow a ketogenic diet when I was pregnant. Now, the thing about keto and pregnancy is, one, it's relatively unethical to do research on pregnant women. So there's really not a lot of research out there. So to say that it's unsafe during pregnancy, I feel like is a bit of a stretch in terms of what they actually know it does. Now, and one thing too to keep in mind, lower carb ketogenic diets are excellent ways to combat gestational diabetes. We know for a fact that gestational diabetes is absolutely dangerous for a baby and mother as well. So to say that whether it's low carb or keto, because I've heard both being thrown into the dangerous during pregnancy category, is absurd, especially if the mother is at risk for a higher weight baby or gestational diabetes. So I want to put that out there. Because I've counseled a lot of clients with gestational diabetes, and they've been strongly discouraged to follow a low carb ketogenic diet, which is kind of a little bit silly to me. But anyway, I pretty much followed keto while I was pregnant, liberally. I did have some fruit here and there as I felt like my body needed it. I'm a big proponent of listening to your body. So I ate a lot of vegetables. I ate a lot of protein, and which is absolutely crucial to a developing baby, protein. So, and fruit as well. So I say all that to say, you have to look at where they're getting their research. Number one, was it actually a good study, or is it some sort of food questionnaire or diet recall type thing? Number two, there's really not a lot of there's not a lot of research on pregnancy and keto. Number three, you have to look at what the mother, her individual situation. Is she gestational diabetes? Is she obese? Is the baby already having complications of higher blood sugars? Because that needs to be taken into consideration as well. So I don't know if that answered your question. I feel like I went on a bit of a rant there, but it's really frustrating to see these blanket statements thrown out about keto and pregnancy. And babies are born in ketosis as well, which is an interesting fact. But anyway, I'm saying that to say these cases need to be looked at on an individual level. And what's most important is that the baby is nourished and that it's in a safe environment. And gestational diabetes is not a safe environment. So I didn't mean to go on a rant there, but did that answer your question?
Did, and I love rants. And this article, I mean, it really just, its claim for it being unsafe during pregnancy is because there's a risk for neural tube defects, specifically spina bifida, which is related to the folic acid. And so they're saying if you're cutting out food groups, mainly enriched carbohydrates and grains and stuff that are enriched with folic acid, then that's where the danger comes in. But there are so many other foods like eggs and greens and broccoli and liver and seafood. There are so many other food sources of naturally occurring folate, which was probably more bioavailable for your body to process anyways. And so I just think their reasoning for lumping pregnancy into this as being unsafe is kind of
a stretch.
Is a stretch, exactly. Yeah, as you said. Yeah. But another fun one, though, that I think the keto community, low carb community is constantly battling is still this inaccurate statement that keto or low carb diets raises cholesterol. Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know that this will ever go away, because I think we have been so ingrained about in fear, like so almost brainwashed into fearing dietary fat because of cholesterol. I mean, this is a conversation I have 2 or 3 times a day. Never fails. I'm talking to people of why you shouldn't panic when, you know, your cholesterol level comes back a little high on whatever the case may be. There's so much nuances may not be the right word. There's a lot of things you have to look at when you look at cholesterol. It's not just dietary cholesterol doesn't affect body cholesterol lab values like we think it does. Number one, you have to look at number two, I guess, you have to look at the whole picture. What size particles, LDL, are your triglycerides also high? What was the fasting insulin level? Keto, research shown, improves cholesterol in a good way. And so and I just read another article that came out about how it makes the LDL particles go to the good size and raises HDL. So cholesterol, I think, is one we're going to battle to the grave. And thankfully, a lot of physicians are catching on, at least some that my clients are dealing with. But I'm still constantly seeing statins threatened and prescribed in my clients. And I'm still seeing a lot of panic around cholesterol levels.
You know, I agree with you there. I don't know if that is something that will ever go away, because I feel like we can talk about it till we're blue in the face.
Yeah.
But it's very easy to just go onto PubMed and do your own research there and clearly see that there are other studies out there right now that are in favor of a ketogenic diet and dispelling this huge myth.
There's also a lot of studies that show, I'm sorry to interrupt, show cholesterol's protective benefits, especially as you age. You look at the one just came out, I don't remember what journal published it, but about higher cholesterol being brain protective for dementia and cognitive decline as we age, which is one of the biggest problems going on right now. We're seeing a horrible spike and increase in cognitive decline as people are aging. So yeah, I completely agree. Just type in PubMed and do a little bit of research, and you'll really realize that this fear of cholesterol is really unfounded.
Yeah, and that's actually, you bring up a good point, because that's kind of like a double-edged sword there with like the dementia and the Alzheimer's and the other neurological brain things that we're seeing, because not only is it tied to cholesterol, but again, going back to blood sugar. So they go hand in hand. So there's really no downside there, I don't think. Leah,
I just wanted to add that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add too, like, there's, you know, if cholesterol is becoming high, there's a reason in the body why it's doing that. And we don't often look at that. We're just kind of like, it's high, it's bad. But actually your body's working as it's expected to help you to do something. So Temple, did you want to talk about that? Because it looks like you.
No, I mean, I completely agree. Like and this may be another Dr. Bickman thing that he says, and I hope I'm not misquoting, but they talked about cholesterol being like a firefighter responding to a house burning down. The firefighter didn't set the fire of the house burning down, but the firefighter showed up, which is what cholesterol does when people say, oh, it's clogging an artery and all of that. It's going to heal so you have to look at underlying causes. Is there inflammation? And to what degree, and also insulin resistance, because, you know, everyone's quick to scream at the firefighter, but really no one looked at the arsonist, you know, running out of the back door. So again, kind of a weird analogy, but cholesterol, you're absolutely right. There's something going on, and you really want to investigate a little bit deeper and look at like I said, the cholesterol size and things of that nature in more of a whole picture type way.
Yeah. And going back to the aging population, we see so many people, like I can even, I hear of so many people, but even a good example is like, say, my mum, who her cholesterol started raising as she's getting older. And obviously we're seeing this research that's coming through that it's a protective mechanism. And the first thing the doctor is like, after all of these years, it's like, right, going to put you on a statin straight away. It's starting to become a little bit of a concern. We'll just put you on that. And then forget about all the other contraindications and nutrient depletions that occur when someone goes on a statin. And then those issues start to bring more, these start to bring more issues to the forefront, which then another medication is given to. And then all of a sudden, all of our aging population is on multiple medications from one issue that was probably the body working as it was designed to be working for us. And yeah, like Holly said, we could just talk about this for hours because it just gets me on my little rant.
Yeah, I like it. No, you're absolutely right.
Well, speaking of more myths, I'm going to move on to the last article, which is 5 diets that cause dehydration. And, one of these great sensationalized titles, which is basically like, oh, I better not do keto, low carb, fasting. I think they're all the ones because I'm going to end up dehydrated. I'll run through some of the symptoms of dehydration. So it's feeling thirsty, dry mouth, urinating less than usual, sweating less than usual, dry skin, dizziness, fatigue, dark colored urine, and medically reviewed. So these are all kind of like the different types of dehydration that's happening. The article is kind of like saying, when you choose a new diet, you've got to consider how effective it will be, but make sure you're vetting some of the potential health risks. And now dehydration is something you should take into consideration with that long list of reasons why keto isn't any good for you. And basically, I think it's maybe a dietitian or the person the expert that they asked in the articles said, ideally, no diet should cause dehydration, but some will require you to pay special attention to how much you're drinking throughout the day to make sure you're adequately hydrated. You should also learn to recognize the signs and symptoms, which we've just gone through. And they were suggesting that basically you're cutting out, You're cutting out, when you're cutting out fruit or entire food groups, the risk of dehydration rises. So what were your thoughts on this article, Temple?
Well, this one was almost laughable in terms of like what they're stretching so hard here. Going to the gym increases your risk for dehydration. Should we also stop working out? I just think this was an absolute stretch. So, and there are some medical reasons why some of these on this list would probably be done or better be done in a medical setting or whatever else. But dehydration, if you're just a little bit mindful, you can avoid pretty well. So yeah, this one was a little bit not funny to read, but it was kind of like, okay, this feels like y'all needed something to write about, a
slow news day.
Yeah,
slow news day. I'll think I can link dehydration to this. But aside from the article, though, from what we've seen, many people are chronically dehydrated or on the verge of dehydration. So when you work with your clients, could you talk to us a little bit about the whole dehydration piece and what things you might add into perhaps their lifestyle to help them with dehydration?
Yeah. And, one thing that people don't realize too is you can be dehydrated while still consuming a lot of water. And what I mean by that is if you're not matching with electrolytes, you can still be quote unquote dehydrated in a lot of ways. Now, maybe not experiencing the classic symptoms, but you're still not going to be operating optimally. So what I recommend my clients do is incorporate a lot of vegetables. That can be an easy way to get water in. I always say, pay attention to what your urine looks like. That's really the biggest indicator of hydration status is what, like you mentioned, a symptom is dark colored urine. Well, pay attention to what your urine's looking like. If it's starting to get colored or dark, go drink some water, keep a water bottle with you. Just being mindful of consuming water every day. And everybody should do this. This isn't, in my clients or my population specifically, really, we should all be paying attention to how much water we're drinking, especially if we live in a more humid climate, or we're doing something outside, or going for a run, or whatever it may be. So yeah, that's my answer there, is pay attention to how much water you're drinking. Make sure you're looking at the color of your urine, and make sure you're getting enough electrolytes in. A lot of people mess this up when they begin the beginnings of a ketogenic diet, is they don't understand the importance of electrolytes. And so that would be kind of my next recommendation, is make sure you're repleting with electrolytes as well.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like in my household, I'm a urine color detector. So if one of the children's been to the bathroom, they haven't flushed, I'm like, you need to drink some more water, get back here.
Yep, I'm the same way.
It doesn't work in my house because my boys very much follow the yellow let it mellow rule. And so I don't know how many peas are in that potty when I see it. So, boys, mom, so fun.
Yeah, right, boys. That's funny.
So just touching back on the electrolytes there, do you usually recommend most people and we're talking about keto specifically here, do you usually recommend that most people take some more electrolytes in when they start a ketogenic diet, or are you more like bio individuals, see what the person needs?
I'm a little bit of both. For the majority, I would say there needs to be at least some conscious effort to get in some extra electrolytes, whether it's just salting your foods and then making sure you're eating enough potassium-rich vegetables, avocado, things like that. I believe you can definitely get your electrolytes in through food as well, as long as you're mindful of it. But yeah, I typically recommend maybe a couple cups of bone broth, especially in the beginning when that water is really flushing. I think you can avoid a lot of the keto, quote unquote, keto flu type stuff when you do have electrolytes. But yeah, I do also make sure I'm paying attention to bio individuality as well. And making sure I know where somebody is on that scale too.
Yeah. And how could you tell, like, if you need electrolytes, is it the same kind of symptoms as feeling dehydrated, or is there something else that can give a little indication as to know whether I might need to add some in?
I honestly tell my clients, and this is not super medically scientific, but I just say if they're feeling off in any way at the beginning of keto, if you're feeling off in any way, whether it's foggy headed, exhaustion, the same symptoms you mentioned, dry mouth, fatigue, all of that stuff, I say just go for it, go for electrolytes. Because it can often be the beginnings of dehydration, is not feeling well, not feeling fatigued, not being able to think clear-headed, and those types of things.
Yeah, definitely. And also, you mentioned food sources of electrolytes, which is really amazing. Is there other things to look out for? Just say you need something on the go, just in case when you can't access those types of foods or something like that. What would you recommend people do? So
either you mean brand wise, like electrolyte supplements, or just...
or what to look for when you're looking at a brand, or if you want to mention some brands that you think are better than others, just for our listeners so they know.
Yeah, I really like Ultima. I like Relight. I like Element. Those are all some really good electrolyte sources, but it doesn't even have to be that complicated. Like if all you can get your hands on is some salt, and you kind of take a shot of salt, that can be helpful as well. I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the electrolyte replacement drinks. A lot of those have a ton of artificial sweeteners or just pure sugar in them. And I won't name drop those, but we can all imagine which ones I'm talking about. But you got to be careful with those as well, because they have electrolytes, but they also have a lot of other junk. So you can do that. You can do a shot of salt. I like Ultima and I like Element and those types, because they have the single serve packets, and you can throw them in your purse or throw them in your car and just keep them around, if you are on the go, so that can be an option as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Or bone broth. I didn't even mention bone broth. Bone broth is another one of my favorite sources of electrolytes.
Yeah, definitely. And there's definitely like powdered bone broths or quick mix type ones that have got really clean ingredients and that you can carry around with you now too as well. So that seems to be definitely improving there. Holly, did you have anything you wanted to add to this article?
No, just along the lines of it being kind of silly, Leah and I were having a little laugh about one of the things listed in here as what can cause dehydration, and they have dry fasting. It's like, well, yes, that would maybe cause dehydration if you are not drinking or eating.
It will, they had to put that in there because somebody didn't know, right? Same thing as like when they create rules, somebody didn't realize that at some point in time.
That's just funny. And I'm like you, I'm a keep it simple kind of girl. I'm all about just a little sprinkle of sea salt in my water. And I think I now like crave that taste. It doesn't make it like super salty, but it gives like the water a little bit of a flavor. And I love it.
Let's face it, we all carry purse salt around. So we've all got a little container of salt, a good quality salt in our handbags.
Guilty. It's like our secret code. If we're out and we see someone take purse, like their salt from their purse, it's like, oh, you're my people. All right. Anything else, Leah?
No, I'll hand over to you now, Holly.
Okay. Temple, I know we said that you are the ketogenic nutritionist on Instagram, and that is with dots in between. It's the.ketogenic.nutritionist, right? Is that the best place for our listeners to find you, or do you have a website also?
Yeah, no, that's the best place for them to find me. They can see my link in bio and get access to all my goodies. I give free grocery list and inflammation list. I give all kinds of fun stuff in my newsletter. So send them there. And then they can also listen to my podcast on Spotify as well. And that's just the Ketogenic Nutritionist too.
Okay, fantastic. And yeah, definitely make sure you're following Temple on Instagram. She does all sorts of really great reels that are just like so informational and to the point. So definitely give her a follow. Well, thank you so much. It's been wonderful having you on today. Leah, it is good seeing you as always. And that is the end of today's episode. Our theme music is created by Andrew Bowden, and production services are by Kevin Kennedy Spain of Disc of Light Media. Have a great week, everyone.
Have a great week.
Bye. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you for listening to Low Carb Conversations podcast with Leah and Holly Jean, functional nutritional therapy practitioners and guests.
If you enjoyed the podcast, come continue the conversation at our Facebook page or leave a review on Apple Podcasts so more people can find us.
You can find everything we discussed today and more at the Low Carb Conversations website, www.lowcarbconversations.com.
And be sure to join us again next week for more Low Carb Conversations.